Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Vicki Thompson. I'm the president CEO of 201 Tampa Bay Cares. We're so glad that you took time out of your busy schedules this morning on Wednesday to join us for our continued series of Bridging the Resource Gap for the faith community. Myself, as well as Terry Carmody, who I'd also like to introduce. Terry, if you can wave. Our moms actually have worked many years in the church office and know how much does come in from people who are needing help into the church office. And here at 201, we want to make sure that we can provide resources to you to help out as best as possible. We've been doing this series for a bit. And I'm going to share my screen a little bit to let you know if you've missed some past ones and you want to join, want to see those past ones. You can go to our website, which Terry will put in the chat. If you could, Terry, do that. It's tampabay.org. And if you go up here, there's this little YouTube mark here at the top. If you click on that, all of our past videos that we've done, primarily they've been recently about housing, eviction, financial assistance, helping the homeless who are coming into the office. So all of those are here. And then we will also be adding this workshop today to that location on our website. So we'll do that. Terry also lists some resources, and we'll talk about that as well for each of the sessions, like a summary page that's also available to everybody. So a few housekeeping tips for today. Again, today's session, we're going to go till 10 o'clock. That's what we have time set aside. It will be recorded. I've already shared with you our past sessions will be posted on our website. Again, if you have any questions during the session, if you want to, you'll see the chat button down at the bottom of the screen. And I know Marcia's going to ask some questions of all of you. That is down at the bottom of the screen, and Terry is posting some resources in there as well. Terry and I will be monitoring that for those, and intermittently throughout the presentation, we'll stop Marcia and say, hey, can we answer this question? Terry, do you have anything else to add on the logistics front?
No, just thank you all for being here, and we're excited to hear Marcia's message that will be very helpful to our faith community.
Great. All right, with that, let's get started. I'm so glad to introduce Marcia Monroe. I've worked with Marcia for many years in the mental health arena. Marcia is currently the community liaison with Chrysalis Health, and she's going to tell us a little bit about Chrysalis Health and what they do. But she's also served many years as the Chief Clinical Director of Central Florida Behavioral Health, and that is the managed entity for behavioral health services that the state under DCF, mental health and substance abuse, outsource that to various regional entities. Maybe Marcia can explain a little bit about that too. I think that's really helpful for people to be aware of how that works, and really coordinates funding for DCF for mental health and substance abuse services. And Marcia worked with them for many years. So thank you, Marcia, for joining us and being willing to share your expertise on mental health, behavioral health today. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Marcia.
Well, thanks. And again, I want to be the third person to welcome everybody and thank you for taking time out of the day. I mean, I think we all live in what I call Tomorrowland. To stay in the present really is kind of challenging. So again, thank you very much. As we're going along, I just want to start with, please put your questions in the chat box. I'm going low tech today. I do not have a PowerPoint, but I will be putting together information after this and getting it out to everybody by next Tuesday. I'll send it over to Terry, and then Terry will send it out to folks so you can see what your questions and resources are in Pinellas County. So going back to what Mickey was saying, Central Florida Behavioral Health Network is what they call a managing entity. They had about a $200 million contract managing the DCF funds for 14 counties. One of them the county's is Pinellas. So they manage the behavioral health community centers in Pinellas County. That would be places like Parr and Boley and Pems and Suncoast and Directions for Living and Gulf Coast Jewish Family Services. So they manage substance abuse and mental health funds. And this is primarily for the indigent folks. So if you've got folks knocking on your door that are indigent, those are the places that you would connect with. There's also Central Florida manages what they call an acute care meeting that meets the second Tuesday of each month. They do it through Zoom. So if folks are interested in that acute care meeting, they cover, again, access to care, engagement in care. They talk about Medicaid and the DCF funds. So that's something for you folks to be aware of. Just a minor thing about Chrysalis Health. Chrysalis Health does substance abuse and mental health for adult and children, primarily Medicaid. They do take some private insurances. Primarily, a lot of services are being done through telehealth. Pre-COVID, things were being done a lot with in-home on-site, meaning that the therapist would meet anywhere in the community. So in-home is kind of a misnomer, but if folks wanted to meet like in a park, or they wanted to meet like at Burger King or some other community place, the therapists were willing to do that. And hopefully we're going to get back to that. The other service that Chrysalis provides to the Medicaid population is what they call targeted case management, which means you don't have to be receiving outpatient services, but if you're needing navigation or coordination of services, this targeted case management can help identify resources and link to resources in the community. So that's another resource that might be of use to Pinellas County folks. So again, thank you very much. So today we're coming together to talk about homelessness and mental health. And what I wanted to cover today was, talking about the homeless population, also talking about de-escalation, and talking about resiliency. And those are usually like 1 hour topics in and of themselves. So I may end up making this briefer than the hour, but again, I want to make sure that I hear from you and see how I can best respond to what you're experiencing and what your needs are. So I will start with, how do people become homeless? Well, I think that some of you are probably better subject matter experts than I am in terms of how do people become homeless. But let's start with sometimes it might be of their own making, meaning that they've decided that they've had it. They want to go off the grid, so to speak, and they want to be living with their own controls. So that's one way that some people become homeless. Other ways, regretfully, that people become homeless is that they find themselves unemployed. Maybe they got laid off, not of their own doing, but somehow the company was restructuring, or because of, like in COVID times, businesses stopped serving as many people as they used to serve, more so like, say, in the restaurant business, trucking business, grocery stores sometimes, again, there was a business drop off. So people got laid off. Well, when people get laid off, they're not going to get the salary that they had, which means then that they can't make their rent. So when they're knocking on your doors asking, where do they get rent? We know that many times it's an under-resourced system. So again, where do people go? Well, they go to the streets. So again, what are we doing? And many of the people that are homeless are typically over the age of 24. That's one of the things that the homeless point in time count was showing, is the people that were, again, older than 24. But again, we also know that we have youth that are homeless. And I'm not talking about couch surfing. I'm talking about youth that are really on the street. And then what happens to them? You know, regretfully, sometimes they become victims of human trafficking. They just become sexualized victims. So again, what do we do with these youth? Another portion or population that become homeless are the transgender. What happens sometimes is you've got transgender youth that they no longer fit in their families. Families have shut the door, put them out on the street, but they don't fit in foster care. They've gone into the foster care system, but the foster care system is not ready to have them self-identify by another gender. So then what do? They hit the streets. So again, you have different reasons that populations are hitting the street. So then they start knocking on the door. They're calling 211. They're coming into the faith-based community. They're coming in to, you know, Pinellas Hope, into Safe Place. I see John Moore. John, are you still with Safe Place? I don't see a nod, but again, you've got different places. There's a lot of resources within Pinellas County, but sometimes the other issue that happens is that people don't fit the criteria. And what happens when they don't fit the criteria? Then they're falling through the cracks. And so they're frustrated, they're giving up, you're frustrated because you're not really sure where to turn. And I think that, you know, again, the one thing that I've seen occur over in Pinellas County is that there is a strong faith-based community where the churches have come together to unite, to provide for the community also. So between the churches / faith-based community, between what DCF has been able to do, what the foundation has been able to do, Juvenile Welfare Board has come together. You've got a lot of different providers and entities providing services. And again, getting that information out is what you guys are really so good at doing. Talk about frontline heroes. You guys, in many respects, are also frontline heroes. I mean, when I looked at COVID, one of my frustrations, getting on a soapbox for a moment, is that we talked about first responders, we talked about law enforcement and nurses and firefighters. But beyond that, we had the truckers, we had grocery store clerks, and then again, we had folks like you that were stepping up and weren't leaving their posts. You guys were there to help out the community. So again, what happens when somebody shows up? Well, whether they show up by phone or they show up in person, this is where I'd like to talk a little bit about de-escalation. The first thing I'd like to talk about is when you're beginning to interact with somebody. And again, I may be just reaffirming some information you already know about. So that would be good. I don't think anything's been really new since the Greeks. We keep kind of restating different things, but at the end of it, we're just stating things that the Greeks said, maybe even Egyptians. So we'll kind of have a retro moment, but coming forward, think about when you're beginning to, again, by phone or in person, talk with somebody. I want you to be thinking about, how are you feeling today? When you answer that phone or you're looking at that individual, begin to think about how you're feeling, because sometimes how you're feeling gets transferred over to what this person may or may not experience, whether you can give them what they need. And sometimes you're not going to be able to give them what they need or want, but start thinking about, how are you feeling? So kind of do a check of you, and then think about, as you're talking to them, what's your tone of voice indicating? Because sometimes when you're dealing with somebody who is stressed out, pissed off. They're talking rapidly, kind of high pitched. And sometimes inadvertently, what we have a tendency to do is match them. So we start talking as fast as them, kind of like we're going to try to out-talk them, or we're going to kind of quell them by talking louder and faster. And it's really important that we think about maybe modulating our voice, talking slower. So that's the first thing, the tone of voice. The second thing we do, again, if somebody's looking at you through Zoom, or again, through more so face to face, when they're looking at your body stance, what is that indicating? Because if your head is like tilted, it kind of indicates like, all right, so I've heard this rap before, or maybe this is the fifth time you've now been back. You haven't done anything I've asked you to do. And why are you here? Because now I'm just getting flat out irritated with you. I mean, it's how do we convey continued respect for people that they're doing their job. And when they do their job really well, it may irritate us to the nth degree. But again, it's remembering that they are individuals. And again, they're doing their job. So how do we shift maybe a little bit what they're doing? Because their expectation from the get-go may be that whether you're the same person they've dealt with over and over, or you're the fifth person at this agency, or the fifth person in another agency, they may be expecting you just to have a kind of, pardon my French, but a kind of screw you attitude. And you don't mean to have that, but they may be conveying that, and then it triggers something within you. I mean, as wonderful as we are, sometimes we do have bad days and things happen. So we want to be thinking about the tilt of our head. Did we place our hands on our hips? Did we all of a sudden have a sideways stance to them? Sometimes, again, that stance may convey that I'm ready to argue with you instead of helping you. And so it's an unconscious thing that we do, but we may be bracing for whatever they're bringing on to us. So again, just be thinking about some of that. Do we have any questions at this point, Terry, that I could be answering? I'm just checking.
No questions yet, but do feel free as she's speaking to just put your questions in the chat, and I'll be happy to relay them to Marcia.
Oh, Marcia, I have a quick one as well to add on. And in addition to the homeless, sometimes whether you're, anywhere in the church, maybe you're doing youth ministry or some other family ministry, and families come up to you and either someone is dealing with a substance use issue or a mental health issue. I don't know, at some point, maybe can you talk a little bit about, and it's hard to get people in sometimes to services for that. So if you could add that into as well. I know Florida, I don't know, are we still 50th in mental health funding nationally?
Yes.
Just to let people know that here in Florida. So that does make it a little bit challenging resource-wise. So as compared to other states.
Yes, Nikki, you're absolutely right. We're like, not only with mental health, but substance abuse, we're like 49th, 50th. So we have challenges with accessing services. We're an underfunded, under-resourced system. But I will say, again, frontline heroes to the agencies, to the faith-based community, because I know faith-based community has also stepped up with their counseling efforts and worked on providing services. So it's a matter of, I hate to say, we can't give up. And I know sometimes I sound challenging because I'm always about plant the flag, don't give up the good fight. And it's only through advocacy and vocalization that we can bring about change. And I was a big one back, again, you can tell with the gray hair that I've been around for a bit. So, but I used to, participate in marches and do all that, but it's through advocacy. So I'm going to jump just a little bit and then come back to accessing services. The one thing, and I stole this, and I don't remember now where I stole it from, but it's called aloha. So when you're beginning to work with somebody who's reaching out to you, is asking them, what do they want? You know, what do they see themselves as needing? Because sometimes what somebody wants is not the same thing as what they actually need. And we still may not be able to give it to them. But I think it's important to understand what is it that they want. It's the same thing when they're coming into treatment. We do what they call a psychosocial. But sometimes we're not asking them, what is it that you really see yourself doing in treatment? How will we know when you've reached all your treatment goals rather than us setting the treatment goals? What are your treatment goals and how will we need it? Because people sometimes will drop out of treatment and then we wonder why. And the question is it something that we did or didn't do? Or is it that they weren't getting what they needed, or did they complete their goals? And many of the people that come to us have their own kind of trauma that we don't understand. And sometimes at the front door, we're not, we haven't been really good. And I use that word good loosely, but we haven't really asked the questions about what kind of trauma have you experienced, whether it's sexual trauma, physical trauma, emotional trauma. Again, food insecurity, financial insecurity. Again, because once we understand the trauma, that's sometimes also where the mental health and the substance abuse issues come in terms of coping. And sometimes it's which came first, the chicken or the egg. Well, sometimes we'll never know, but it's important to collect all that information. So again, ask. The second thing, which is part of Aloha, is listening. Really listening to what they're saying to you, because sometimes when we listen to people, and we do this also with family members, because we're fixers, we don't really listen to what they're saying. We've already gone into a fix-it mode, and we're already preparing like what they need to do. What does this person need to do? Rather than maybe they just also want somebody to listen to them. Maybe they didn't really expect anything. The other thing is observe them. Are they fidgeting? Are they looking anxious? Again, are they, picking at their clothes? Again, observe them. Are they shuffling their feet? What is this telling you about them physically? I mean, because maybe there's physically something going on with them. It could even be a medical problem that's been undiagnosed. But again, observe them. And also this helps with de-escalation, because if you start out with somebody and they're beginning to talk more rapidly, the one thing I see people do also, as people are escalating, we sometimes move into them. We do not want to move into them if they're beginning to talk more rapidly or beginning to use more hand gestures, because this might end up with a physical confrontation, which is not good for you or them. I was on a mobile crisis team for several years, and the one thing I learned rapidly is you don't move into people. Let them have their space. I mean, if they ask for like a hug, that's okay. But sometimes, again, because we're fixers, we want to move in, and sometimes we want to offer that touch, or we want to offer something. And again, with people that maybe have been traumatized, touch is not a good thing without permission. So again, just putting that out there. And then we want to help. We want to ask them, what does help look like? Because again, we want to offer them help, again, whether it's something you can do or putting them in touch with an agency, or as Mickey was indicating, making a referral to a mental health or substance abuse agency, helping them understand that it may not be immediate. Because, and I'm just going to use, this sounds horrible, I just know that I say this, but I think we're a country of immediacy in general. We're used to, fast foods, fast clothes, fast cars. But when it comes to mental health and substance abuse treatment, it takes time, and regretfully, it takes time to access care. And when you get into care, sometimes we're looking for that magical pill. You know, it's kind of like, I know no one on this call has ever been on a diet, probably, and nobody here has ever done any kind of physical exercise, I'm probably sure, to tone up, right? So when we think about going on a diet, we see it as having a beginning and an end. Well, that's not right. It's a change in the way that we eat. It's a change in the way that we take care of our body. Mental health and substance abuse is a long haul marathon. It's the way we choose to view the world, take care of ourselves, take care of others, and deal with substances sometimes. So again, looking at the help. And then at the end of it, it's wrapping everything up that you've done and asking again, you know, was this helpful? You know, and knowing and recognizing what your limits are, what your entity or agency's limits are, what your church's limits are, knowing that, again, there's, as much as we want to provide free housing to everybody, that's not going to happen. As much as we want to be able to feed everybody adequately, that may not happen. I mean, you guys have in Pinellas County great food pantries. You've got great places for people to go, but considering the need and considering what there is, it sometimes is overwhelming to everybody. So that's part of the challenge, is knowing that you're going to have, you can help some, and sometimes helping some is better than helping none. When I was back at Central Florida, and we have what we call utilization management, which is, I had a team of licensed clinicians that were working with the crisis and detox units. And I would say to them, it's not a matter of changing a lot of people, but if you can begin by changing one person's life, you need to pat yourself on the back, because that one person, it's one person, and that's important. Yeah, would I like to save the world? And let me tell you, I'm a big animal lover. I've recognized I can't save everybody. I can't save all the animals, but I can change one animal's life at a time. I can change one person's life in the time. Random acts of kindness, and we all are really good at that. So again, this is really important when you're dealing with folks. Let me just check in for questions or anything like that.
No questions yet.
I see Mickey smiling, so I'm just checking. We're
No questions.
No questions yet.
all
I
right.
did mark your aloha in the chat box, Marcia. For
Okay. And again, I stole that, so I want you guys to know it. I just don't know where I stole it from. Otherwise, I would give them credit. Because when I was thinking about doing spending time with you guys, and I came across this. This was just like 3 weeks ago. And again, this is where you never know where things are going. That entered my life. It's kind of like COVID. Who would think that with COVID, we would spend a year almost in isolation? And nobody does well in isolation, more so our kids and our senior adult population. Folks need contact. And then in between it, you've got everybody else that needs contact, or there are people that have now ended up on the street because of COVID. I mean, I'm hoping that we are entering a time of plateau. I'm hoping that with the vaccinations, that there is stability coming, and that we're not going to hit like another peak. But the pandemic certainly has changed how we lead our lives, what we do, and how we do it. The way our food pantries run, when we see people in line at the food pantries, it just breaks my heart. But this is where we are. Again, there's nothing immediate sometimes that can be done, but it's continuing to be able to encourage people never to give up. The other issue then, and this is like moving on to resiliency, is there's something called vicarious trauma. And as you listen to people's stories, as strong as we are and as strong as our faith may be, there are times where we may feel challenged. And there may be times where we're not even thinking about how the stories and what we see with different people is truly impacting us. And it's something that we need to keep like in front of us, that again, as we hear the stories or we see some things that we probably were never meant to see or hear, we need to afterwards think about, how do we refill our own emotional gas tank? What are we doing to take care of ourselves? Because there are times potentially where we leave work and we go home. And again, as much as we may have our own faith, or we've been trained as therapists, I call it almost like kicking the cat. Like, you didn't mean to be stressed out, but maybe you were a little bit more short tempered with your partner, your child, your animal, your neighbor, somebody driving home, because I see more short temperedness. It's almost like we've lost our ability for tolerance. It's just amazing, some of the things that I hear like on the news, and you're probably as shocked as I am. So it's like, again, thinking about, what are you doing for resiliency? What are you doing to reward yourself, to re-energize yourself? Like, some of us, again, are not sleeping. Well, what could you do to, maybe exercise a little bit more? Again, some of us may be having an extra glass of wine. Maybe some of us are sleeping too much. Maybe some of us, again, the COVID weight. There have been jokes, which it's not very funny, but it's like some people have been put on like 10 pounds or so because of COVID time. Not healthy. So again, what are some healthy choices we could make, so that we pass on the healthy choices to the folks that we're working with? So those are just some things about resiliency, and taking care of ourselves, so we can think better about how to take care of others. So that's kind of like, I feel like I've jammed in a whole lot.
So, Marcia, I know while we're waiting, maybe we can ask the group, would this be a good time to ask the group if there's any particular questions that they have specifically about situations? You certainly generalizing that situation, not identifying any information, but that you've had to deal with that were a challenge, in, either somebody walking in or calling in, that you feel maybe had a, either a mental health or a substance use issue. And then maybe we can talk about maybe some of the potential resources for some of them. So does anyone have any of those? If you want to put them in chat, or we also have the ability in, I believe, reactions, to raise your hand in there as well. So we can recognize you as well if you have a in-person question. And I'm scrolling right now. I don't see anyone raising their hand or no other questions. So, Marcia, can we talk a little bit about, or Terry, do you have a question? I just saw you went off mute.
No, I was saying I don't see anybody either.
So, Marcia, can we talk a little bit about the resources for folks? I know that's what we get asked. I get asked when I'm out in the community. Why is it taking so long? I have somebody who wants to get into detox. How can they go about that? And again, community heroes, the agencies they're doing everything they can with the resources they have. But Marcia, can you talk a little bit about some of those resources for people?
Well, again, depending on, let's start with the mental health and substance abuse. In your area, of course, you've got, Suncoast and Directions that primarily provides the mental health and they do some co-occurring services. And again, when you call in, accessing that, they sometimes have what they call an orientation group, and you go and complete the paperwork, and then a week later you get scheduled for outpatient services. With Bowley does a lot of residential services. They provide homeless services. Directions for Living also provides some homeless services. You have a great homeless leadership community in Pinellas County. PAR does the detox. Sometimes, and ACTS is doing some detox. ACTS has been providing some detox services in Pinellas County. So that's in addition. Also, Turning Point, and I'm blocking on, it'll come to me. There's several agencies providing residential substance abuse services for indigent folks. Again, if you're depending on the resources you need. Thank you. I see from Daphne, yeah, employment services, important things like that. You also have the drop-in center, Vincent House. You can go there. They provide supportive employment services. They help with resume services. So that's very helpful. You've got Pinellas Hope that's in the community. You've got the One Stop, and I'm not saying this correctly, so Mickey, I'm going to look to you, but it's Safe. Is it Safe? It's not Safe Coalition. What is
Safe Harbor?
what?
Safe Harbor?
Safe Harbor. Safe Harbor is like a one-stop shop, if you will, with multiple services there, along with, people can stay there for X amount of time. So the other thing that I think Terry has listed is my name and phone number. So if you call me, let me know what other questions you've got, but I'll be putting together something that'll be available by next Tuesday. So you can look at different links and services. I know that the mental health community is coming together to, at PEMS, who does a lot of the crisis or Baker Act services. You also have mobile crisis services that are now being provided through PEMS. You have also the Sheriff's Office who's doing mobile crisis services. You have, I don't know if you're aware of it, but it's called Pinellas Integrated Community Team. And what they do is for folks that make multiple calls and all that, they have a team that goes to folks' home, clinicians and case managers, and they work with folks to link them to services. Also, Gulf Coast Jewish Family Services is developing a mobile crisis team that I believe will be located in South County through the St. Pete area, and that may be helpful. I see things building, and those things, the mobile crisis team, they don't ask you what your funding is, because a lot of times you'll hear barriers to funding. And this again, feel free to reach out to me, because like I can sometimes come up with some ideas. For instance, I just had somebody that was telling me that their son was falling through the cracks, and I'm like, well, let's call your insurance company. The insurance company, I'm not sure, was so comfortable, because we did a conference call, but it was talking to the insurance company saying, I have the mom on the line. Let's talk about what services are covered and what providers are within this county in order to provide for this family. So those are things that can be argued, believe it or not, or like with Medicaid, you can argue like flexing the services. You may not know that, but providers know that. I know that. So there are things that can be done for that. And again, looking for rental services, what's available there. And sometimes that's done through the county. Sometimes it's done, 211 has a lot of information. Juvenile Welfare Board on their website has a listing of it. What I will check on, there's another resource. It's called Aunt Bertha, and that seems to be gaining popularity. It's like auntbertha.com, and you can go in there and tag different resources that you're needing, and it'll come up with a listing of resources. And I will check to see if that's available for you guys in Pinellas County. So again, the more resources we've got, the better that we can serve the community in which you guys are living.
Certainly, and 211 also has an online database of all those services Marcia's listing on our website. You can go to our database and do a search as well to bring up all those resources. And we also have an app to let people know. It's called 211 Connects that you can download free of charge to your cell phone device. And it is updated when resources are updated. We do have some questions that have come in. I'm going to go to the chat, and then Kelly will go to you. So Terry, you want to read the chat?
I can, and I also wanted to mention that the link to those mental health resources on the 211 website is in the chat. It's up earlier, right around 9 o'clock, but I can put it in there again after we do these questions. So there's a question, and this is a situation that happened when people were waiting in line for food. So there was an informal group that had gathered, and one person, became agitated and focused on the person who was kind of handing out the foods. So how would you just engage somebody in that informal group situation? And that's the question.
And again, this is probably some common sense, and you guys, but it's having another person maybe go up to that person and begin talking, talking to them about, I know this is taking a lot of time and this is very frustrating. And can you, how long have you been waiting in line? But asking them questions, trying to get them to focus on something else. Again, they're not going to want to focus on that. Because again, this is where I'm talking about intolerance. It's that as we stand in line or we are in the cars, our frustration tolerance drops. And this is where people start honking, or they get out of their cars and start yelling. And it's like, I'm really sorry about this, but we're all in line. I know that this is frustrating. I need you to get back in line. I'm sorry, but, could you not, yell? But it's like taking a one down approach potentially and redirecting them, not asking them to get out of line. And it may get to a point where you do have to ask them to get out of line or move. I was just, when you said that, I was just thinking about when we had a hurricane and I was over in another county, and FEMA gave out numbers and then they told everybody to go home. But afterwards, it was announced to the staff that was left that they weren't going to honor the numbers after people left. So in the morning when people were coming back, the numbers weren't honored. And all we could do is apologize, and people were pissed. I mean, again, pardon if somebody's offended, but people were pretty upset. So, I mean, do we wish things went smoother and more quickly? Sure. But it's like reaffirming to them that, this is very frustrating. We understand that, standing in line, sitting in line, this is no fun. It's almost like, they may get even more irritated, but you're trying to again, divert their attention to something else. Next, Terry.
That was the only question that we had.
So Kelly is on. Kelly from Empath Health, from I can see from her background. Kelly, you had a question or want to share something?
Yeah. So recently I have seen two instances where gentlemen were near traffic on the sidewalk, but stepping off the sidewalk. They were gesturing, they were talking. I feared for their safety. And one, I was, driving in the left lane. I was stuck there, so I couldn't I mean, I don't know what I would do if I got out of the car anyway, honestly. But I didn't know if I should call the police. One did end up getting onto a city bus. So he was waiting for the bus, but while he was waiting, I didn't know if I didn't feel like other people were in danger, but I thought this guy might get hurt because he is stepping off the sidewalk and then back on. And I could tell with the gesturing and the talking to himself that he was agitated. So what, should I call police? I mean, I don't know.
Kelly, so a couple, first off, when you get that uncomfortable, dial 911. It doesn't hurt. Are there some people out there that maybe they're treated and they're having an episode? Sure. Maybe there's some folks that are not treated that could be brought in for an evaluation and help to link to services if they're wanting services. We also know in the perfect world that no matter what we do, there's going to be a percent of the population that will not accept treatment, and some people would argue that's their civil rights. But one of the things that I would offer to you, and this happened to me, is I was turning onto my street to go home in the afternoon, and I saw this guy lying, like his legs were kind of in the street, but his body was up on the grass. And I was concerned somebody would run over him. And I kind of stopped near him just to check that he was breathing, number one. But number two is, being is how you don't know what somebody's really capable of doing, because sometimes people are really innocent. And there are also times when people are doing something like that, that they inadvertently may harm you or harm others. So I pulled my car up and parked it away from him, called the police. They generated, of course, EMS, and they all came out, but I waited until the police released me. But when you're in a situation also with traffic, you can't do that. And again, you don't want to put yourself in jeopardy in terms of creating a wreck where you're trying to stop, but all of a sudden your car gets hit and you end up in a multiple car accident. Because again, you try to do something as a good responder. So yeah, and I don't think the police and knowing the mobile crisis team would have any issue with calling them and saying, somebody's doing this, can you come and help? Or can you come and assess the situation? Because maybe they might see something, or again, do another intervention.
Yes,
Okay.
Here at 2-in-1, just to dovetail on that, every law enforcement agency does what's called a wellness check. They do wellness checks. So certainly calling them, it would be, in what you're sharing, I would say a worthy call, because you're concerned about the person and their personal welfare, not in a, we want them arrested or whatever. You're calling because you're concerned, and again, our local law enforcement organizations here in Pinellas County are really beefing up their teams to respond to mental health situations, particularly the sheriff and the city of St. Petersburg. Definitely have specialized teams that they've hired. I know Gulf Coast is working with the city of St. Petersburg, and I know the sheriff's office is hiring folks internally. I do know Directions for Living is also working with, I believe, the Largo Police Department and I believe Bel Air. They're trying to do, so there's a lot more happening in law enforcement that wasn't there before. That now moving forward, there's a lot more resources that are active now that can be helpful, checking on people's wellness, rather than just, we're coming out, we're going to arrest you and take you to jail, or Baker Act you for 72 hours to evaluate your mental wellness. So it's the term they use is a wellness check. If you feel you want to call 911, say, I'm just calling for a wellness check on this person. That's a term that they're aware of, that it's not somebody with a, you don't know if they have a gun or not, but you know what I'm saying? It's not an active danger situation.
You know, and the one adding to that, and a little bit of a shift, I guess, is, you know, for case managers, as an example, or people that are used to going to people's homes and all that. If you go to somebody's home and the door is open and you call their name and they're not responsive, do not go in. Again, for your safety, you know, I'd invite you to do what Mickey's suggesting, which is call for a wellness check, you know, because the one thing you don't want to do is move into a situation where you're not really clear what the emotional state is. The one thing that I learned a long time ago, and many of you probably already know, is that, you know, when you're working with somebody, no matter how great a relationship it is, when somebody becomes stressed out, you want to make sure that, number one, you don't turn your back on them. You want to make sure you keep a safe distance, and you want to monitor the situation so it doesn't really escalate. And again, in this day and age, people, their fuse is a lot shorter than it was like 12 months ago. So it's like protecting you, protecting them, and trying to keep everybody safe. And that's really what it's about. And it's like, it, for me, I'm really excited and hopeful that law enforcement and others will continue this new approach, if you will, for behavioral health, and recognizing folks that have Asperger's or autism, or you know, that are having a mental health crisis, or even substance abuse. I mean, there have been times where using substances, all of a sudden somebody is so energized that they look like they have extra strength, and it takes 5 people, so to speak, to restrain them and get them safe. And you don't want those people to get harmed, and you don't want that individual to be harmed. And sometimes that's a, for lack of better phrasing, a very gray area. And so this is challenging. I mean, and this COVID stuff has really made everything extra challenging for everybody. So again, I just, you know, as we're coming to wrapping up, I just want to thank you guys for everything you do every day. I mean, I don't think we say it enough to each other about being kind, doing something nice, and a thank you.
So we have also another question from Christy Zulis. So Christy, let me see if I can help you unmute there. Go ahead.
I just wanted to piggyback on that. There's been situations where I've seen someone that looked like they were in need of help. There's a woman that kept stumbling into the road, and I called you can always call the non-emergency number. And I had called, and someone else had already called before me, and they said help was on the way for them. And another instance, I was driving a company vehicle to pick up clients, so I couldn't stop, but I saw a guy riding his bike and he just fell right over. So I called, and they came, and they had picked him up and had been there within 10 minutes to assess him. So yeah, it's always a good idea to just call, you know, if you see something, call so they can assess, because they're the experts on that.
Right, definitely.
Thank you.
Again, and they are really open to wellness check
Mhm.
calls, and to doing that. They're building out those specialized teams with those departments.
And
Other,
that's what the faith-based community is good at doing also, because with folks that are reaching out to them, the faith-based community has been so awesome to continue to provide that support. You know, again, everybody, when we pull together, which, you know, I always remain hopeful that we're pulling together. But sometimes, and I do a whole thing on bullying, but, you know, it's amazing what folks do. So, you know, be kind. And you guys, as you know, put that out there also, for just folks to be kind, it's amazing. Random acts of kindness.
great. Other last minute questions. We can hang out here for a bit. We have about 3 more minutes, but we can hang out in the event someone has some additional questions at the end or in the chat. We'll make sure, Terry, do you want to share a little bit about after what we're going to be sending out afterwards?
Sure. So we'll take some helpful links that we have as a resource at 211, and I'll put them all together in one email. So you don't have to look around for them. Everything will be together. It'll be a helpful resource for you. I'll send that out afterwards. And Marcia will also gather some resources, which will come out next week, and we'll get that out to you as well. In the meantime, if you have any thoughts about future topics for these type of webinar conversations, we would love to be of service to you in the faith community. We've touched upon 4 topics already, and if you'd like to review those, they are on our website under training, and I can put that link in the chat. But we'd love to move forward and continue to assist you in helping others. So if you've got topics or thoughts, you can email or put it in the chat, and we'd love to hear from you. And that's it. I'll be sending that thank you out with the resources, and Marcia's resources will come soon thereafter.
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. I know everyone has busy schedules. We really appreciate your time. Again, we'll stay a little bit, Terry, myself, and Marcia, in case anybody has any individual questions or anything like that in the aftermath. So thank you so much for everyone who's joined us. We really appreciate it. And again, it will be up on our website, hopefully by the end of this week, the video from today. Thanks, everyone. Stay well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Take care. We can, let's see.
You know, Soriano is a name of a cousin of mine, like in Spain, which is so weird to see, you know, like a namesake, like, you know, it's like, oh, look at that. You know, random things that come to my little mind, you know. Well, I appreciate you guys also inviting me and letting me be part of this. So thank you, Terry and Mickey. So yay.
Great information. Thanks. It was so informative.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I felt like I was trying to put things in little boxes, you know. It was like, okay.
Well, we did give you a broad topic, Marcia, to talk on. So.
Well, no, it's kind of adds to the fun of everything, you know, because it's like sometimes I put so much in that it just kind of drags over, and then sometimes it's like, well, now it's so compact, and it's like maybe if you pour water on it, like a what were those things where you pour water and the gizmos kind of sprout or something? It was an old movie, and they're doing a commercial off it now, so I have to figure this out again. So
does
Anyway,
anyone have any
I'm
questions?
gonna actually also stop recording as well here for a moment. Hold on a second to end our session.